This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
You can learn a lot about a tree by taking a closer look inside. Have you ever looked at tree rings when a tree was cut down? Each ring represents a year in the tree's life. Some rings are close together, some far apart, some thick, some lopsided, and others round. These rings develop in these ways depending on what is happening in the tree's life. Was there a drought? Too much water? Were conditions perfect? How many nutrients did it get? What about sunshine? Was it invaded by pests? Just like with trees, you can learn a lot about a human and what they need by looking inside. What is out of balance? What is going well? What patterns have you created? What traumas have you experienced? What are your strengths? What do you need to thrive? Inner wisdom is something we will learn to listen to and cultivate throughout our entire lives. Everything changes when we learn to follow our hearts. Valeria interviews Leah Wentworth. She began her coaching journey in 2014 at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, where she was taught to support people to heal through a whole person, mind, body, and spirit approach. Since then, Leah has become a Reiki master and certified in EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, Psych K, Core Gift Facilitation, and most recently, she has been certified as a Sacred Depths Transformational Coach. She works with clients on an individual basis, in groups, and in transformational retreats. Leah has an innate ability to see people's unique beauty and guide them back to health and wellness through supporting them to reconnect with the truth of who they are. Prior to her coaching career, Leah received her BA in Environmental Science, taught for over 20 years in various settings, was a birth doula and a birthing from within childbirth educator, a farmer and CSA owner, and has traveled all over the world. When not working, Leah can be found in nature, gardening, working on homeschooling projects with her kids, crafting, playing guitar, sitting around a bonfire with family and friends, or adventuring with her husband and 3 children. Meet Leah at innerwisdomhealth.net. Here's the interview with Leah Wentworth.
In your own words, who is Leah Wentworth?
Such a deep question, really. And you could answer it, I feel like, in multiple ways. But, sort of the basic surface level is more like I am a mother. I am someone who deeply appreciates nature and the connection with nature and earth. And I feel like my soul's calling is to work with people and with myself to learn to follow our hearts. And to me, that's really about, I feel like each person has their own unique light, and it's about connecting, learning to connect with that and really follow it. And so to me, that's sort of my, who I am, is someone who supports other people to follow their own knowings, their own heart. And there's lots of things that I like to do in life and enjoy, but it's the essence, I feel like, of my soul's purpose, is really to support others to come into their own knowing.
That's beautiful, Leah. The follow-up question had to be this one. How do we
become aware of our soul's calling, as you say. Some people might call it purpose, mission, but in a way, how do we know for sure? You probably have also heard about self-actualization, about coming to live our full potential. So
Yeah.
I see a lot of people in search for that. The question is really about the feeling. What does it feel like when we are there, when you have found your soul's calling, as you say?
Yeah. And I think it's really a lifelong
Right.
journey
Right.
that
Yes.
there's
Yes.
always more
Yes.
levels and
Mm.
truth that's unfolding. But when we connect with things that really resonate with us, when we connect with our own words or when we found our soul's calling, when we're working with it, I think we feel really grounded. We feel at peace. We tend to trust more and allow things. There's like this flow that happens that's just like, for me, I experience it as almost like I'm not even sure who's talking. Like it's
Yes.
something that's coming through me, not like I'm thinking up all this stuff and just like
Mm.
it's more of it's such an alignment with when you're working in your calling and your soul's purpose that so much of that conditioning and what's right for what society says is right, I feel like that head game stuff kind of steps aside and we're more in our true flow. So I think there's because in the beginning of our life when we're young, 0 to 6 or 7, our minds are like just wide open and we're really learning how the world works and conditioning. Our mind is being conditioned, and unfortunately some of how we're conditioned is to not necessarily believe in our own wisdom,
Mm.
and so later in life, as we depending on how far away we move from our truth, it's a real process of unlearning and getting back to our essence, our truth. And yeah, I kind of forget my train of thought there, but
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it resonates very much with me. Yes. It's a process in a way, like you said, we are uncovering that also moment by moment, day by day. So it's
Yeah.
not it's not a destination, right, Leah, that we arrive
Right.
at and stay there.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I love the description that you gave, the sense of peace, trusting more, kind of being in flow, listening to the spiritual mind, as I like to label it,
Yeah.
being more intuitive, also following the heart, as you mentioned, trusting our inner wisdom. So trusting more, I know you said that and you didn't connect that to inner wisdom or intuition or anything like that. Is that something that trusting the voice that some people call it to, let's see, spirit guides?
Yeah.
I have talked to people here a lot about that, and they say, yeah, I can clearly hear their voice, like angels, people who have passed, or loved ones that they're still around them. So when you say trusting more, in your case, would be more of inner wisdom, something that sounds abstract for some people, not to me, but for some people it does. So can you please kind of elaborate a little bit more on that voice that you trust per se, and how do we also kind of separate that or distinguish that from the voice of the mind and other people's belief systems?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, the voice of the inner wisdom, it is, and this is why it can be hard to like find, is because it's really quiet
Right.
and it's more about a feeling necessarily
Mm,
than words.
mm,
And so I often like, and that's part of why I love utilizing the wisdom of the body to do this work and to heal and to find ourselves, is when we tune into the body and connect with what we might be feeling or sensing, that I feel like when we're in the body, it separates us from the mind thinking. And
mm.
then we're rather trying to like interpret
Yeah.
what's coming through us, what's there, like what we're really sensing. And so that feels like very different than thinking about something to me. And in the work that I do with people, it is about separating the thinking mind. And so I'll just give an example of,
Yes, yeah.
working with someone who, let me see if I think of a client, who, okay, so a client that came to me she came to me originally for this extreme fear of needles. So she could not go to the doctor to get the work done that she needed to get done. She had dentistry she needed to get done. She was just like, would go into this like panic and pass out. And so she wanted to like work through some of that. And the first, after a few sessions, I asked her to connect with that fear. And this is like a little guided thing of like, where in your body does that fear live? What is that fear? Like, what is it? Is there a shape to it or a color? Like, and once we like are separate from it, it's almost like we can then be an observer instead of be in that fear. We're like observing that fear and seeing from a different perspective. And then once you're really like connected with it, then talking to it, like asking it questions like, what is your purpose? Do you have any guidance for me? How can I support you? How can you support me? Like things like that like help the person to see that it's just another part of themselves. And so often we feel like fear or anxiety or, that these things come in and like take us over and we don't have control and we don't have like there's something bigger and better than us in a sense, that is like just crushing us.
Yes.
And so it's this sort of like befriending this part of you that has and discovering where it came from and what its roots are about and how can it. So often these fears actually are generated in the beginning from a place of wisdom, and so there's when we're a young child and these fears come up, it's for protection, and when we can see that instead of in our adult minds, like we tend to judge ourselves and criticize ourselves and why can't I get over this and what's my problem? And we go into that kind of thinking about it. And so bringing it back to the roots and helping us come to this place of understanding allows us to start transforming that
Yes.
into something, and finding the wisdom in it.
Right. Yeah. So it is the work of healing, of self-knowledge, self-trust. How it always goes back to that. It's incredible how the answers, as you have heard in so many of us, so many times, the answers are within. It's never out there. Although it helps a lot when we have a guide like yourself, coaches, and people that can show us the way.
Right.
Within, because it's not easy for some of us who have experienced trauma. It's not an easy work to do on our own.
Definitely.
Do you also work with clients who have a trauma history, Leah?
It depends on, part of what I do is I'm really allowing the client to be the leader. And so I only go where they're comfortable and feel safe to go. Like, I don't try to take someone like I don't have the skills or whatever to take someone somewhere that they're not leading themselves,
Yes.
and they're not ready to see. So it's really about that.
Oh, I love that.
That trust between us, of like, reminding them, and some people can't even close their eyes, like to go into their body is not workable, And
Yes.
so you do other things and find other ways. I have some fun other little activities that, can support people. But I think part of sometimes it can feel safe because you're stepping into that more observer rather than re-entering that trauma place, but you're coming at it from more of an observer perspective.
That helped me a lot. Yeah, that's been my case with the traumatic childhood trauma and all that, and trying to connect with the body, mind, and heart, but it was not really clear, and it was not possible to do that fast enough on my own. And I remember connecting with nature. That was my kind of my reference for
Yeah.
groundness, to feel safe. And
Yeah.
it still is. It's interesting to see that that's still my main, let's say, source when it comes to anything that has to do with safety. That's the place to be. Yeah, it's exactly like that. It's an observer kind of place. I call it awareness, and some people call it pure consciousness.
Yeah.
It's a place where it's not easy to explain because sometimes it gets mixed up with experience and we lose ourselves there. It's a wonderful place to be, which it is really what we are, right, Leah? Well, that's my understanding. We
Yeah.
are not the experience. We are the one who is behind all this, the experience itself.
Exactly. And nature is so huge for me too. I just feel like I need, to be really grounded and stay connected with the truth of who I am. I have to be in nature every day.
Yes.
And the more
Yeah.
days I go
Yeah.
without being in nature, it's like the farther I get from my truth and the more like
Mhm.
unsettled and kind of in my head and,
Yeah. Mhm.
I get, as soon as I step out onto the trail, it's I just am like, okay, yeah, I feel myself coming home to being in my body and feeling safe and feeling grounded. And, I feel like there's things like utilizing our bodies, utilizing nature, like trees. Trees are one of my guides of just like,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
is it the voice of the tree or is it just my own inner wisdom speaking
Mhm.
as if it's the tree? You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
I've often
Yeah.
like asked a tree a question and I hear
Huh.
an answer and,
Yes.
you know, so it's that sort of that's the sort of way to connect to your own knowing is for
Mhm.
me is sometimes asking something outside of myself the question and seeing if I can hear the answer.
Yes, yeah, it has been my case too. Yeah, I do that. Actually, I only do that really when I'm in kind of crossroads, when
Mhm.
going through tough situations, challenging situations, and then I have to kind of I need the answer because I see emotional turmoil kind of setting in. Well, there was a situation where my mother-in-law came to live with us, and she wasn't well psychologically.
Yeah.
And I could see that pick up those energies. So I ended up being very unstable and unclear, confused, amidst of all my healing work, my spiritual work. I was really
Right.
not really, I could not believe that was happening. So I went to a tree, right? And then asked the question, what should I do now? I don't know what to do.
Right.
And then I just sit down there and waited. And I said, trust, trust. Kept saying that word trust. I said, okay, so I need to trust the situation and be in and see what's the meaning, what it's trying to tell me. So, and that's exactly what I did. I trusted in the very beginning, but then something, I think the shadow came in and then
Mhm.
it started to try to push her away. And that's when something even more interesting happened. That's when I started doing things like to get her out of the house, irritated. And then I remember kind of having those thoughts and being guided by them. And then I was just wondering, wow, I shouldn't do this, but why am I doing that? Nothing to harm her, but just to annoy her. And I remember her getting really upset. And then my husband got upset. And there was this huge fight. It was a very unpleasant conflict within my own house. And then I also noticed something else happening. I felt guided to do other things, kind of correct that. The shadow, as some people call it. I don't know what to call those parts of us that sometimes come in and it's aggressive and it's, as you said, it's coming from fear. So it's trying to protect us regardless. So something happened very interesting where my dog kind of jumped. We were playing in the backyard and he jumped on me. He never did that. And then he jumped on my face with his paws and then scratched close to my eye and then made a huge, it's almost like a bump. It was really red.
Uh-huh.
And then I couldn't believe it. All this was happening. It's like so strange. And then the confusion with my husband, the conflict and the turmoil in the house with my mother-in-law and my husband. And then he said, look how she's doing her best. Look at her. She probably was crying all night long. Look at her eye. And he pointed to me for her to see, almost in the attempt for her to feel compassion or be kind towards me or something. And that was interesting to see because I was kind of listening to his words and it was not the truth. The dog had done that.
Uh-huh.
But of course I was really sad. My heart was, I was just so in a place that's not, it's not a place that I wanted to be. So I was trying to find connection again. And then I see all this taking place, like the dog doing this. Really this is amazing. And of course I don't feel like we are apart from anything. We're not separate from anything. So it's almost like an attempt of life itself, find connection, find harmony again in balance. So it does what it needs to do in a very, sometimes, let's say, unlogical way that we can't comprehend, but it's happening in front of us. If we are present enough, we'll be able to see.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I think I never said that on the podcast. I never mentioned that, but I felt like this was the time.
It makes so much sense to me. I feel like there's, if we're looking, there's always guidance everywhere around us, in our animals, in the people, how they're responding to us, how we're responding to them. If we're just like, again, it's like not about it's like you have to be slightly aware versus in the emotion, in the interaction, it's like you're just grounded enough to be able to see and that I feel like that's part of what some of our conditioning has been is that we're not supposed to take time like that. Like it's not like our health is not the most important thing, and it really should be, that should be conditioned into us that we get plenty of rest and that we take time to ground and connect with nature and feed ourselves with nourishing food. Like this should, I wish this was like part of our
yes,
our cultural norms,
Yes.
But we really have to work so hard to create this for ourselves so that we can stay in awareness.
Yes, I agree. And another interesting thing, I know it's beautiful the way you speak of nature. Of course, most of us connect with that idea. I talk to so many people. Most of us do. But I also noticed that it's not as easy to think about as the invisible world when we talk about presence, so being aware, being the observer. It's kind of being able to sense what is in between almost everything that's happening. What rests in between actions with an experience. I think most people don't talk about that because it sounds supernatural, strange, something that only psychics, mediums, or spiritual teachers will talk about. And so there's this, it's almost like an agreement, to be logic all the time in the sense of only acknowledging the physical reality.
Right.
I noticed that within us, right? Most humans, day-to-day living. And I would love to see that changing, that shift where we are able to be more of what we already are, the human and non-human.
It's so interesting that you said that. Like that was one of my first, like in my healing journey, that was one of the first things that I kind of gave myself was, I told myself, I don't have to I don't have to be able to explain why I'm choosing something.
Right.
Like giving myself permission to just
Mm.
trust that I know that this next choice is right for me.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't make sense, even if I can't explain why, even if I don't have words for it, I'm just allowed to say, this is what I need to do, or this is how I need to live, or this is what I need, this is what I want to do for work next, or whatever, because life is a journey and it's constantly unfolding in front of us. And we don't completely know the end path, even if we think we do.
Yeah.
Life doesn't,
Yes.
it's like we change as we
Mhm.
go the whole time. So
Mm.
our destination is constantly changing,
Yeah.
And it's just like giving ourselves permission to unfold versus sticking to what we said we were going to do. We've
Right.
studied to be an environmental scientist, so you better go out and be an environmental scientist. Well, what if that's not, exactly what I wanted to do,
Right. Yes, that's
once
it.
I got there and once I was done and with my training, I was like, this is leading me down a different path.
Right. Yes. You see, that also takes that openness to understand life is now constantly changing from the body mind perspective. That's what we are, really. We're part of the natural world, so we can't really change. We cannot not be that when it comes to the human experiences as body mind. Right. And acknowledging that is so powerful because that, to me, being open, it's part of that acknowledgement. Okay, so I'll be open to what is next. And in a way that becomes so much more fun to life. Can you imagine just knowing everything and just kind of having all the steps for what will happen next? That wouldn't be fun.
Right.
Although I don't really subscribe to the idea of suffering, in a lot of the human experience, sadly, is kind of built around unnecessary suffering. But I do believe that has to do with this closeness, not being open to life itself, which that's what we are. We're not separate from life. Going back to what do you do, as I said off record, I love the name, the title, Sacred Depth Transformational Coach. And then I want to mention the other ones too, EFT, Psych K, I believe that's how you pronounce it. And then Core Gift Facilitator, Reiki Master. So sacred. What do you consider sacred, Leah? What is sacred to you?
I might describe sacred as something very important to you, something that is something that's about your heart. It's connected to your truth. It's work that is sacred depths is about learning to see and love and acknowledge and live all parts of you,
Yeah.
And I think that's what the sacred depths is about, is like, there's so often there's parts of ourselves that we've shut down and hid away and tucked in the corners because there's this other, like, more ego part of ourselves that is sort of like, this is who I have to be in the world, that we've learned, like, I have to look like this and perform like this. And the depths is like, really, like, the sacred is that all of us, all of ourselves, even the parts that feel uncomfortable and maybe even we don't like to some degree, when we're first start to explore, like, and parts that we don't want to live out, like, it's all beautiful. Like, we are a whole being, not just the little bits that we wish we could only be.
Yes. Yes. So true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
That's powerful.
yeah.
Empowering too. Powerful, empowering. Yes. So that's my idea of wholeness, right? That we are
Yeah.
already complete. We are whole. There's nothing
Right.
missing, nothing to be added really to become worth of being here.
Right.
That's really my starting point for everything. It has been for the last 10 years. I'm already
Right.
there. And the interesting thing to see is that the mind, the logical, rational mind, keeps kind of trying to get in the way of
Yeah.
that truth. No, 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 no. You need change. You need to change this. You need to speak in a different way. You need to get better at this, improve at that, and
Right.
change, transform, and all that. But there is room for all of this, right, Leah, for transformation, for change. So I'd love to hear from you. What would that look like, this balance between mind and heart, wholeness and healing?
Well, I think that, first of all, it's part of self-love and acceptance is accepting that we're going to fall back into old ways of being, and we're going to get caught up in our mind and our conditioning, and that's normal.
Yeah.
It's totally normal. And so it can be like a relief to, I don't know, when I first started down my real healing journey, like I had put a lot of pressure on myself to, like, I would understand these concepts of, like, you know, speaking my truth and getting grounded, but I couldn't always do it, you know? And so I would get really upset with myself that I knew it intellectually, I understood it, but it wasn't like incorporated fully into my being yet. And so I would continue, and I still do continue to be pulled out of that and into what I call, I use the word triggered, but it's an altered state where we're not fully grounded. And so we don't have access to our wisdom in the same way. And, multiple things can do that. And so it's really just being playful with ourselves, being kind to ourselves, allowing the process to unfold.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of forgetting the question you asked me now. I went down this journey. Did I answer it?
Yes, you absolutely did. That balance between, yes, yes, yeah. You see, and this is what is playful about it too. You see, because the mind is always trying to make sense of everything and just go do anything in a linear way in order to
Right.
make sense, in order to be accepted by that that agreement that we have with most humans to
Yeah.
make sense here. But it is. I noticed that the heart, it doesn't really communicate with words that well. I really noticed
Yeah.
that. I have
Yeah.
interviewed and met a lot of beautiful, amazing people that they couldn't really express themselves as well as other people, but I felt their presence so much more powerfully. They made an impact on me. They never left me, their presence, for a reason. That's the thing. I know I keep saying that too, even here. Do I make sense? Does
Right.
it make sense to you? Yes, I think that you see, but that's beautiful too, because that's part of connection, isn't it? Human connection. We love that. It's innate, and we can't really separate ourselves from others. What is not to love about that? That really says something about truth, that everything is interconnected.
One of the things that I really stuck out to me in my mind in the very beginning, I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and that was like my first step into training into wellness. And one thing that really stood out to me was just that they talked about how everything is connected. And I utilize this in my work a lot, especially when someone is stuck in a certain area. So I had, we did this at work where we looked at the wheel of life. I don't know if you've ever done that, where you just kind of rate the different categories in your life. Like, how are your relationships? How's your education? What's your, and I had been really focused on my relationship with my husband for a number of years and was getting kind of frustrated that I couldn't seem to make the shifts that I wanted. I couldn't seem to find the breakthrough that I was looking for to help us communicate in a more healthy, whole, loving way. And I just kept falling into those potholes,
Yes, I can
And
relate to that.
And the suggestion is to take another category in my life that I needed or desired some work on and put some of my attention towards that. And so I had realized, like, as a younger person, I really enjoyed doing all kinds of crafts and was always busy creating things for people and making things for my home and whatever. But since I'd been in relationship and had a child, like I hadn't been doing anything creative. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to do a creative project because that's an area of my life that I desire to do more, but I haven't been focusing on. And it wasn't more than just like a few days later, I had worked maybe 2 hours on a creative project altogether, And all of a sudden, things started shifting in my communication with my partner. And flow started happening and we started having these breakthroughs and we had these moments. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is the coolest thing I've ever experienced,
Yes. Yes.
Everything is connected,
Yes.
And so we have to trust that what we're doing, is supporting so many areas in our life, and the unfolding in so many interesting ways. So
the interesting thing is to see the focus has a lot to do with that logical mind again. It's very good at it, right? Focusing to trying to solve problems, and then it really concentrates on one thing and tries really hard. But then you see awareness, the other part of us that's more open and expansive. It kind of leans towards almost like it doesn't have a focus. It's everywhere. So much fun in that sense because it taps into different aspects of our being. And it wants to dance with those energies. And you see, when we allow that to happen, then that's what we call magic.
The magic, exactly.
The magic happens for sure.
Magic happens.
I love what you mentioned earlier. You did talk about you mentioned self-love, self-acceptance, right? Self-love. That was my, let's say, one of the first steps for me, healing, acceptance, and then self-love. And now I hear that from so many other people. They still put that on top of the list when it comes to living a healthier life in a sense of meaning and depth. It has to go back to you always, within, of course, but you. So the focus in a way, it's you. But the interesting thing is when we focus on ourselves, let's say that intention to know more about ourselves, then we ended up loving ourselves more, being more creative, healthier. And then we pass that on to others, and then it becomes a gift. And then we become this beautiful gift to the world. It feels that way. That relates to your work in finding our truth and coming from that place, following our own hearts. I think is the only way we can really help other people and humanity.
Right.
It's coming from that place.
Listening to you, it's like that piece that it reminds me is just like the humanness, like that we're all human, like that. I feel like when we understand, when we like really let go of the huge expectation and weight on ourselves to be more, to be different and be perfect and be and do, we put so much pressure on ourselves. And when we can just accept that, like, you know what, we're human and everyone struggles with things and, makes mistakes and makes choices that they wish they hadn't made. And, like it's normal. And so when we can normalize things, it's so helpful in the process of self-love. Is like, you know what? The fact that you do this is normal. Like a lot of people do this. So give yourself a break,
Yes. Self-compassion, self-kindness. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really starts there, I have to say. And because I'm very interested in truth, I'm a truth lover. So anything that sounds true will get me going.
Yeah.
So I go as deep as I can with spiritual teachings too. I'm a student of Vedanta. It's a non-duality Hindu spiritual philosophy. That philosophy goes as deep as, I don't know any other spiritual philosophy that goes as deep as Vedanta. I really don't. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not.
Vedanta? No. It's Advaita Vedanta. So it's non-duality. It's not a belief system because they explain, it's almost like the science of spirituality, the way they explain everything. So it goes back to that essence that everything has one ground of reality, the absolute reality. So there's no two. It's almost like in terms of, let's say, religion, if I can use a religious word, God. So is that everything is God. And it's not that God is in everything, it's that everything is in God. So it's very profound like that. It's very subtle, especially that phrase that I just said, everything is in God. So as you said earlier too about sacredness, so what is sacred? I think that's why I asked that question. And then you made that whole, it's everything, right? There's nothing that's separate from that. They go really, really deep, and I'm very interested in depth. But then when I go back to the human experience, I'm like, wait a minute, how do I embody that depth into my day-to-day life as this temporary body mind? And that it makes me very humble a lot of times. And I think that's what is beautiful about being a human, being here, whatever this is that we call life, is that we are able to kind of connect with everything else that seems separate from a very humble place. Even if we know the truth, it's almost like the truth, it is enough to hold us in our own joy, peace, a sense of, wow. Like I don't have even words to say. It's that sense of, yeah, I can't even find a word for it. Yeah. But at the same time, you're able to connect with incompleteness, things that seem to be broken, not to be healed. So it's just such an incredible experience. And I guess that goes back to what you talked earlier about the soul's calling. And I have heard a lot about the soul's contract, the soul's purpose. So there is something about being on earth, having this experience here, that it gives us the opportunity to experience everything, the finite and infinite at the same time. It really does. It really does.
Yeah. Well, just thinking about the word broken that you just, because of life's experiences and challenges sometimes, and wrongdoings by other people and whatnot, this we can develop this sense of like we're broken, in some way. And when you step back and feel that wholeness, and that, the parts of all, that we're connected to everything, I don't know, it somehow lightens that more human experience of like feeling broken, and turns it more into, it's just a part of my unfolding and my unraveling to the wholeness,
Yes.
the brokenness is more the finite sort of in this moment, in this experience. But then, when we step into this feeling of wholeness, it's when we really see the connectedness. And
Right. In a way, it's not easier. I was about to say it's easier to kind of look at suffering, but it's not easier. I think it makes it more, I think it doesn't allow the mind to judge it as wrong. So there's something that happens that says, this is part of the experience of being a human. The human experience includes everything. That's how I define love too, Leah. Is that freedom, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't think God or the universe or life's pushing away anything. It's open to it all, and allows everything to happen. When we really think about it, it's incredible, incredibly loving.
Right. And I think that's part of that the healing journey, right, is realizing that there is freedom and that we have choice. I think sometimes we forget that we have choices, and we can feel stuck in patterns and ways of being and in our pain, and wait, we have choice. How else can I see this? How else can I experience this? What else can I do to try to live, to step into my wholeness more,
Yes. Yeah. I guess we're just using words, but I try, for some reason, the idea of choice doesn't resonate with me. And yeah, it's interesting, right? The idea of free will, that we have the choice to, I don't know, Leah, I feel like it's more of what you said about trusting. Once we begin trusting the inner wisdom, life itself, the universe, God, whatever it is that we believe in, then something greater than ourselves, then something happens. Because I do feel like the universe, life, God, our inner wisdom, it's constantly seeking harmony, constantly bringing us back to love, to
Yeah.
balance. So I trust that. And
Right.
I don't feel like it's a choice, because that would separate me from it. I think that's how I feel it.
Maybe the choice is in like remembering
Mm,
that trust is there. Like when we're stuck in the human experience, like, oh,
yes.
right,
Mm,
remembering that I can pull back from this. Like that's a choice
uh,
to
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and maybe choice is not the right word, but remembering that there are other ways, there are other states, there are other.
Yes, right. Or, which is the same thing, remembering that we are not apart from life, that we are
Right,
one with life,
right,
with God, with our own inner wisdom. What we call inner wisdom is something separate. We are one with it. So we're connected to everything. So I think that's, for me, it has been incredibly helpful to kind of, you see, not coming from a place of I trust life. I am life. I don't have a life. That's how I usually, as a mantra, as something to remind the mind, not to
right,
come in and try to question that.
right.
Yeah, I am one with you, whatever you are. I even say that way in a, almost as in a way of contemplation to the mystery too, because we can't really comprehend, even if we can sense without words, even that we know what this is. It's still incredibly amazing
Right.
to be here. Like, well,
Yeah.
how could this happen? I was a child. I remember around 7. I remember asking these questions,
Yeah.
looking at myself in the mirror. Oh, you're here again.
Uh-huh.
So you're here as a woman now, as a girl. So as if I knew that I was here before in a male body, or if I was
Uh-huh.
that I was here before many somehow in different forms, without knowing, having this kind of expressing this information, just without any logic, any idea. So that's what I now, I guess, as an adult, my practice is to return to that knowledge, that it was not learned here by the mind, intellectual mind. It's just came. It's innate. We all have that. It's here because we are life. Again, does it make sense to you?
It's so beautiful. Yeah.
So we're almost at the end, and I want to thank you for your beautiful presence and for being open even to a conversation like that. I'm a truth lover, so I'm always exploring everything. A lot of times live here, and a lot of times for my own practices, because I go to sleep and I wake up contemplating the mystery of life.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, what's not to love about it, right, Leah?
Exactly.
Incredible. So I want to mention your services. You offer holistic life coaching, and you utilize EFT, psychic K, core gifts, and other transformation techniques to support other people's journeys. You do energy work through Reiki, and then you offer retreats and women's circles too. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Did I miss anything, Leah, here?
You got it.
So that's your services, and the website. I do have innerwisdomhealth.net. So I'll have that linked to this podcast profile page. So do you have anything to add, anything that you left unsaid that you'd like to share? Because I do have an ending question for you.
Okay. Well, ask me the ending question.
Oh, so that's a question that I usually ask everyone. For some reason, too, the last question, the first ones, they keep coming back. So they stay here in a way. They don't want to leave.
Uh-huh.
So I just
Uh-huh.
allow them to be. What 3 experiences you wish everyone to have before they die?
Well, one, I wish everyone to have that experience of feeling um, really grounded and present in their own being. That just having moments of just real deep trust and presence in their own being, having some moments, if not lots of them, at least a few. Yeah. And, I feel like experiencing the childlike wonder of life at all ages. I think sometimes as we grow up, we forget to be playful and that life is this magical, mysterious, beautiful unfolding, and we can get really serious and stuck in our ways, and I just invite that curiosity and wonder, and I hope people have some moments of that, the remembering of that, how vast the world is, and all those questions, why,
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Yeah.
And I wish for people to um, experience their calling, to really know that the work that they do, to remember that the work that they do is important, because we're all connected. And I feel like when we're remembering that what I choose to do, what you choose to do, affects the whole, to remember that that we're each an important part of this huge world. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Leah, for your beautiful presence, the wisdom that you carry and that you share with others. That's generosity to me. And the love. You come across very loving. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you so much. We all appreciate that very much.
Yes.
So
thank you.
Take care of your beautiful self for now, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Leah Wentworth and her work, please visit innerwisdomhealth.net.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.